Controversial Zelda opinions. Every Zelda fan has them. I've been quite outspoken about my own Zelda hot takes. You know, I called one of the most well-known Zelda games overrated, but today is not about me and my own trash opinions. No, today I will be reading the internet's most common Zelda hot takes, and giving my opinion on them. I scoured the web, searching high and low for the spiciest Zelda opinions, while also taking into consideration the rate at which they appear. I mean, I guess if these are common occurrences, then they're not really hot takes, but that's not the point. Without further ado, let's jump into the first unpopular opinion. Ocarina of Time's water temple doesn't deserve the hate it gets. Okay, yeah, there's definitely a lot of hate for the water temple. I mean, I rank the temples in Ocarina of Time, which you can check out here, and I put it in 8th place, or 2nd to last. The reason I put it in 2nd to last place isn't because it's a bad temple, but because it is extremely tedious to complete. Having to constantly backtrack, change the water level, and switch back and forth between the main menu to equip and unequip the iron boots just makes it a bit of a slog. I honestly think the main hate is coming from the player's first experience with the temple. I remember playing the water temple as a kid and getting lost and confused about what exactly I was expected to do. Changing the water level wasn't super intuitive to me, and remembering which switch does what was also very disorienting. This water level issue was fixed or made more intuitive in the 3DS version of the game, which is in my opinion the definitive version of Ocarina of Time. But back to what I was saying. The experience I had as a kid has kind of tainted my view of the temple, and I think that, along with how long and tedious it can be, just kind of soils people's opinion of it. Oh, and don't even get me started on that one key that's super easy to miss. It's definitely not the worst temple in the series. I mean, all the temples in Ocarina of Time alone are amazing in their own way. But still, the water temple tends to leave a sour taste in people's mouths. So, yeah, I can see both sides. The next opinion is one I've held for a long time. You can tell the Zelda timeline was an afterthought, and it's not well thought out at all. I'm sorry. I've personally never cared about the Zelda timeline when it's not relevant. So what do I mean by relevant? Well, I only care when the games are directly connected to each other, or the logic of when the game takes place is extremely apparent. Allow me to give you an example. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. These games are connected. They feature the same characters and the same locations. Thinking about the timeline in the context of which game comes before the other makes sense. Another example is Skyward Sword. Skyward Sword is very clearly the first game in the series. I personally like to think of the games as separate entries, unless directly stated otherwise. When you really try to connect all the games, things start to get messy. You have separate timelines. Like after Ocarina of Time, it splits off into 2 separate timelines, where Link was either defeated or successful at the end of the game. Within the successful route, it branches off again into another 2 timelines, one for the child era and the other for the adult era. They then converge again later on, and it's just... there's really no need for all of this in my opinion. I don't know, I personally just don't get the hype. Next. Skyward Sword is a good game, people just hate it because of the motion controls. Oh boy. I probably won't go too into this since I recently made a video on it, but I agree. Skyward Sword is in my top 3 Zelda games, and I think it has some of the best story, characters, and even music. A big complaint I see when people talk about the reasons as to why they disliked or couldn't get into the game is because of the motion controls. I never had any big issues with the motion controls when playing on the Wii, and I honestly think there might be a fault with the type of Wii remote you had if you experienced this. I think having the Wii Remote Plus was probably needed to thoroughly enjoy it, but that's just a theory. A game theory. Okay, no, let me stop. The Switch version kind of fixes this control issue, but I would honestly never play this game with button controls. It just feels weird, and this game was literally designed around motion controls, so you'll be missing out on how the game was truly meant to be played. But if that wasn't your issue, I genuinely don't understand what would make people hate this game. Yeah, it can be a bit repetitive towards the end, and you have to fight a couple bosses 3 separate times, but it still does other things really well. Again, I'm not gonna get too far into it, so you can check out this video for my full opinion. The 3-day time limit in Majora's Mask sucks, and limits my ability to play the game how I want. Okay, What I'm about to say might be a bit shocking, but I can actually see why the 3-day time limit turns people off of this game. Hi, if you're new here, Majora's Mask is my favorite Zelda game, and this was also one of my complaints during my first couple playthroughs. In case you've never played the game, allow me to give you some background. Majora's Mask takes place on a 3-day time loop. Link is forced to relive the same 3 days, helping various people and completing tasks over and over again until you can break the cycle, thus preventing the moon from crashing into the earth. It's pretty much Groundhog Day the game. Majora's Mask is definitely one of those games you'll need a guide for. Since you only have 3 days, or 72 hours, you need to move quickly. Certain events are only limited to a certain day, and if you miss a step on a certain day at a certain time, you will need to restart the 3-day cycle and repeat all previous steps. There is the Bomber's Notebook, which is extremely helpful. It keeps track of all the people you need to help and the events you've triggered over the last 3 days. But still, having a short amount of time to complete everything is anxiety-inducing. Oh, I should also mention the Song of Inverted Time, which of course slows the flow of time. But again, the days still aren't incredibly long. I personally think this unpopular opinion is a valid opinion. Like, I can see where it's coming from, but it definitely does not ruin the game at all. In fact, I've actually come around to thinking it makes the gameplay more interesting. It's just a bit off-putting at first. Next, Breath of the Wild has an incredibly weak story. Ah yes, another opinion I've talked about on this channel. I honestly think this can extend to Tears of the Kingdom as well. A lot of the story in Breath of the Wild is told through the use of memories. Link slowly starts to remember things from the past, how we know Zelda, what happened to her, and other notable characters. As these memories happened in the past, Link doesn't actually contribute to the story in real time. I mean, of course he does in the sense of finding the Divine Beasts or defeating Ganon, but the most interesting part of the story has already happened in my opinion. You can also completely skip the story, which, yeah, sure, player choice, woo! But where's the fun in that? Nothing really big or moving happens between the beginning and the end of the game. There's no clear middle since everything is available for completion once you leave the Great Plateau. There's a clear beginning and a clear end, with maybe the middle of the game was the friends we made along the way. There's no explicit build-up. By the end of the game, I wish that we were actually playing the story in the memories, rather than whatever happened in Breath of the Wild. The memories are scattered all over the map, and you have to seek them out if you want the full story. It is also likely you'll find the memories out of order, which can lead to spoilers, or the player just being a bit confused. I'm not sure why they didn't just play all the memories in order, no matter where you found them, but it's Nintendo, so I try not to question them. I honestly hope all future games drop this whole memory thing, and just allow the story to unfold in real time. Sailing in the original Wind Waker is good game design and not a flaw. The ocean is supposed to feel large and vast. Yeah, this totally makes sense. But when actually playing the game, I'm going to find and use the Swift Sail every time. Wind Waker does a really good job of setting the tone. This game really does make you feel like a young boy setting out on an ocean adventure to save your sister. Sailing is definitely a big portion of this, and I do think having these long sailing segments lends positively to the overall atmosphere. But still, when you have to sail from one side of the map to the other, it definitely starts to feel tedious. I really don't know what else to say. This is exactly why they created the Swift Sail, to cut down on sail time, while still keeping that same ocean adventure feel. I personally see nothing wrong with using the Swift Sail, as you can still use the normal sail if you really want to. Side note, this will probably be the next Zelda game I make a video on. The characters in this game have so much depth. Ugh, I need to play it again to fully dig into what makes this game so unique. Next, there is no reason for Zelda to have full-on voice acting. It's cringe in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Okay. Is this really an unpopular opinion? Did anyone really like the voice for Zelda? I remember the first thing that came out of my mouth when I heard her for the first time. I said, why is she British? And why does it sound like a fake British accent? It actually is a fake British accent, which, that's a topic for another day. I feel bad for saying that most of the voice acting wasn't giving what it was supposed to give. Like, I know these actors put their best efforts into it, but most of it fell a bit flat. I personally am not a fan of voice acting in Zelda in general. I prefer a couple grunts and a couple oohs and ahs every now and again. But yeah, I can definitely tune out any future voice acting if needed, as long as Link never speaks. That is my only non-negotiable. Uh-oh, 2D Zelda is better than 3D Zelda. As much as I would love to have an opinion like this, I personally disagree. I don't think it's a wrong opinion because this is extremely subjective and depends on what you value from these games, but I would say most 3D Zeldas are better than the 2D ones in most aspects. I really like the gameplay in 3D games as it feels more immersive. In a 3D space, there's up, down, left, right, front, back, all the directions are at your disposal, and you're not thinking about the game on a flat, one-dimensional plane. You can clearly see the environment, characters, and their facial expressions. There also tends to be more cutscenes that make you feel like you're watching a movie. This leads to more memorable experiences, as I can clearly still remember various cutscenes from various games. I still think the 2D games are really good, don't get me wrong. I love A Link Between Worlds, Oracle of Seasons, Link's Awakening, etc. I think the 2D games are incredibly fun and offer a more relaxed and sometimes even a more difficult experience. Again, because you have to train your brain to think about things in a different, more 2D way. An underrated example of this is in A Link Between Worlds. That game is truly outstanding. The merge mechanic was genius. Link literally becomes a flat 2D version of himself, and this allows you to get around walls, gaps, and other obstacles. I cannot give this game enough praise. All that being said, I still prefer 3D games over 2D or top-down games. Breath of the Wild has the best original soundtrack in the series. Okay, I completely disagree with this. There's no bad music in any Zelda game, but Breath of the Wild definitely has some of the least memorable music. Like, when I think about the music in this game, my brain has to scramble to try to find a song that I like. The only thing that really comes to mind is the horse riding music, which is good, but all the music is very background-ish. Nothing really stands out. Yes, I know, that's the point. The focus is supposed to be on setting up the atmosphere for where you are, blah blah blah, but I don't know. I miss distinct and catchy tracks, something that I can turn up to while running around Hyrule. Nothing will beat rolling up to Gerudo Valley for the first time and hearing one of the most iconic pieces of music. Like, come on, tell me this doesn't get you in the mood to venture into the desert. I personally think Breath of the Wild is nowhere near having the best music in the series. I think the top 3 spots belong to Skyward Sword, Ocarina of Time, and The Wind Waker, in no particular order. This next one is very controversial. Ocarina of Time is overrated and hasn't aged well. As an Ocarina of Time defender, this opinion is incorrect, Your Honor. If you take everything into account about Ocarina of Time, when it was made and how it was made, it is rated perfectly. It definitely deserves praise for revolutionizing the series and games in general. Like, imagine being a kid in the late 90s. All you've played are 2D games, but then you see it. A game in 3D. A game that draws you in and pushes the current console at the time to its limits. You're running through Hyrule in what was at the time high-quality graphics. The cutscenes show a side of the characters you've never seen before. Literally. Get it? Because the switch from 2D to 3D? This game is even responsible for inventing lock-on targeting, something that has saved my butt plenty of times. Now, when talking about it aging well or not, I mean, if you're talking about the N64 graphics, fine. That's fair. The blocky nature of the original may not be the best to look at, but if you mean gameplay and story-wise, I'd have to disagree. This is a classic story of an unlikely hero. Link starts off by being the only boy in his town without a fairy. Nobody would think he would be the one to grow up and save the day. You truly feel like you're embarking on an adventure, and the weight of the past, present, and future is on your shoulders. Everything you do has consequences, especially with the time travel aspect. The game does a good job of establishing characters and their relationship to Link. Like, you truly want to save child Zelda, who you met after sneaking into the royal courtyard, and your friend Saria, who you've known your whole life. Even when it comes to villains, Ganondorf is incredibly intimidating, especially when standing next to child Link. Also, the twist with Sheik, a random person that has been guiding you throughout the game being Zelda, was the cherry on top. And finally, the last controversial opinion of the video. And oh boy, is it controversial. Zelda 2 is the best Zelda game. I personally haven't played this game yet, but based on the amount of hate or dislike people seem to have for it, I'm not sure I'm looking forward to it. I've always heard it was super hard, and unforgivingly so. A lot of people say they couldn't have beaten it without save states, which is a bit concerning. But to balance out the hate, I've also seen people say that it has good music and is rewarding to complete. So, that's nice. Since I cannot agree or disagree with this, I will leave this one up to you. So, how are we feeling about these unpopular Zelda opinions? Are there any in particular that you agree or disagree with? Also, let me know if you would like another one of these videos. Leave your unpopular Zelda opinions in the comments, or even your unpopular gaming opinions in general. Maybe I'll make another video that your comment will be featured in. I was also thinking of doing more community-based videos, pretty much one where I make a form, you guys fill it out, and I present the results and my thoughts in a video. For example, we can try to figure out what the best Zelda game is, which game has the best Link or Zelda, yada yada. Let me know if that sounds interesting and I will most likely do it. Anyway, my name is Andy and I hope to see you in the next video.